In this video, we're going to take a look at a simple, easy-to-use Claude Opus autocoder. In my previous video with dueling autocoders Opus versus GPT-4, we explored a much more complex autocoder, which can use GPT-4 Opus separately or both at the same time. But I wanted to break it down and see how we can build a simple implementation that is easier to get up and going using Opus only. So in this video, we're going to review this code, the Claude Opus autocoder plus the Claude Unified class that we are using to build this. The way it works is pretty simple. We just write what we want to work on and give it a file name. Now, normally you probably don't absolutely need this, but we do need a file name. But I thought maybe we can specify what we want to work on. In this case, I said HTML canvas animation, but it could have been a DB app or anything like that. And the name could have been, instead of index.html, main.py. This particular one works with single file applications versus the previous dueling autocoders can work with multiple files. I just find it more pleasant and easier to get involved with a single file, especially when you're doing quick experiments. Anyway, let's just quickly see how it runs. So when we run this, we're going to set a system message, and then a chat loop is going to begin. Let's ask for an interactive gravity simulation with different shapes. So now we are getting a response from Claude Opus, and we're going to write that to file. And from there on, we'll be using that file. So that file is going to be our context window, so we can make modifications once this file is written. And in our next iteration of conversation, then Claude will take that into consideration. In case if you wanted to add features, either manually or if you wanted to talk to Claude to add them, both should work just fine. Okay, so the first iteration is complete. We have our index.html written with HTML canvas plus JavaScript. And we are in the next iteration of the chat, but we can just see what this looks like. You can actually use the live preview extension. Live preview is this one. When you have an index.html file, an HTML file selected, this little icon will appear, and you can click and see what's been produced. So we can actually add some stuff here. And as you can see, this is working just fine. You could have also used live preview, which is also another extension, and it will pop up right here. But this actually worked just fine, right? So in this case, now that we have the index.html file, we can actually modify it, or we can ask Claude to do additions to it. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but we can ask add ability to move the objects around with my mouse. So when we do this, automatically the app actually opens that file up, whatever file we've specified, adds it to context along with your user input. So now actually it's saying to it the ability to move objects around with your mouse. You'll need to track mouse events, so it's going to try to implement that. But I do want to say that you could have directly modified the index.html, maybe copied this, pasted to ChatGPT, for example. So you have really quite a lot of options in this kind of implementation. Let's see what our second implementation is going to look like. Once this is completed, it will be saved again, overriding the index.html file. Now, the files for this project will be available at my Patreon. Link will be in the description. You can also find all my projects and their code download links at my website, echohive.live. Link for that is in the description as well. So our second iteration is complete. You can see that we have now a much longer file. Let's see how this is going to look like. We had a circle, and actually we are able to move it around. So this is great. This actually worked better than expected. So in this fashion, we can actually iterate and build interesting projects. It's very simple. Let's take a look at the code. It's actually pretty simple. We are going to talk about Claude Unified class that I've created. Actually, let's talk about that real quick since we're using it here. So the main interaction with Anthropic API happens here. This is just a class called Claude Chat, which actually you can give it a name. It takes in an API key. You can give it a model. By default, it's Opus. We can give it mix history words because it can have a history. Mix, you can also specify mix words per message to softly instruct the model to return within certain lengths. For example, if you were to specify 100, it'll try to return give or take 100 words per message. You can set its stream parameter to whether true or not. It's by default true. And then we also have an automatic retry mechanism, just in case if the API gives us errors. This default system messages, you are a helpful assistant. And here we set the max retry. These are all its attributes. As you can see, we have a history, which is a list. Then we set our Anthropic object And then when we are initializing this class, we print an initialization message. We have a set system message method that sets a system message, add message, automatically adds messages to history. We have print history length, just in case we can clear the history. And we have a chat method, which uses the add message to add the message to the message history, and get response method to get the response, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Trim history is just to go over count all the words in our current message history and start dropping messages. If it exceeds the amount specified, it's set at 10,000. And get response method actually can take in any kind of keyword arguments to pass on to the API call. But usually speaking, the message handling is handled automatically. And we can set mix tokens as well. Otherwise, it's set to 4,000. It's interesting that with Anthropic, you do have to set model, messages, and mix tokens parameter. So we set it anyway. If you don't specify anything, it's set to 4,000. And then we just make a call and we can see if we want to do streaming responses or not, print it to the user. We add that to message, automatically trim history. And if in case we get an error, then we retry. So in a nutshell, that's what Cloud Unified is, and will be available at my Patreon. So we instantiate an instance of that class with streaming true, and we set the mix history words to 0 because we don't want to keep any history. You can actually modify this any way you like, but the way I envisioned it is that our only message history will be the current message that we are inputting, Opus, and then plus the file that we're working on. I thought that was sufficient enough, plus it'll save tokens. And the requirements for this is very simple. It's just Anthropic and term color for colorful printing to the terminal. Towards the end of the video, maybe I'll do a few more demonstrations with the Cloud Unified so you can see actually how you can use it to build apps with it, such as, for example, I use that to build this autocoder. Anyway, once we have specified initialize our class, then we are actually not dynamically taking an input, but you can modify here what kind of project you want to work on, and you specify a file name. We don't absolutely need this, but we do need a file name so we can dynamically change and save it. We set a system message saying, I would appreciate if you can help me with. This is the system message for Claude. Whatever we want to work on, in this case, HTML canvas animations, and we say only return your answers in the following format. And we are using these tags. And within those tags, we insert the file name plus the closing bracket tag with the closing bracket. So Claude follows this instruction very well. So this will be our system message, and our set system message method automatically sets it for us. And then we enter a while loop. We just take in user input. We try to open that file name if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then we just simply pass. And if it does, then we modify the user input by saying that this is the file we're working on. We give it the file name and the current file content. Plus, we give the user input after a new line. That's it. So then after that, we call the Claude's chat method, which uses the add message and get response to get a response from Claude. That's going to be our response. So if you have a file that already exists, right, it will automatically use that. So you can actually put a file that you're working on here. Just make sure to set the file name correctly here, and then you'll be good to go. Because we take in a user input and we modify the user input if a file that we're working on exists. If not, we won't modify this user input. Okay, I actually just added another check just in case. If there is a current file, we modify it and it works fine. Otherwise, we just call with the regular user input, and after that, we look for those tags and we get the code from in between those tags, which is Claude will return it to us, and that'll be our code response, and we write it to file. So that's it. It's very simple and easy to work with. Like I said, these will be available at my Patreon. If you'd like to explore some of my other projects, do check out my website, echohive.live, and I have links to my other apps such as CodeHive Beta, which is over 900 plus GPT-powered Python chat applications for inspiration. Let's take a look at that. Also, I have my AutoStreamer project, which creates content in real time and builds educational websites. You can watch the live stream here and see how it works. I just want to show you real quick how the Cloud Unified works in a nutshell. To start building apps with Cloud Unified, all you have to do is import Cloud Chat from Cloud Unified, because that is the class that we're going to be using. And then when you're instantiating your Cloud Chat, you can actually refer to these parameters, such as stream being true or false. You can set mix history words, for example, and you can actually set mix words per message. Let's set this to 1. just to demonstrate. And then after this, all we have to do is you can just say cloud.chat, and you can just send a hello message, and this should automatically print in the terminal. Let's do it like that. And if you run it, it should respond with a single word, hopefully. Yeah, so it just said hello. If you were to say 5 words. So this is like an upper limit, so it won't try to fill it with 5 words or anything like that, but it acts as a soft upper limit to limit per your tokens on a per message basis. You can also store these responses and do whatever you like with it, right? You can just say response. And if we were to set streaming to false, then we could have just print the response right here instead. And this is the initial, this red text as the initialization message, gives you information. Yeah, you can modify the class and just work with it. I won't include this, but I'll include the autocoder and Patreon download. Do let me know what you think of it, and I'll see you in the next video.